Hello, I'm Keith Hart, Chief Training Officer for Star Rider. This video is about compulsory basic training, which all learner motorcyclists will have to complete before riding on the road unaccompanied. The instructor will have to be satisfied that the trainee or candidate is capable and safe to ride on a road unaccompanied without an instructor before the certificate of validation can be issued. In this particular course, 2 instructors are used, myself for the on-road instructing and Steve Giddens for the off-road half of the course. The introduction to the course is a theory session and should cover the points listed. It should be kept simple and basic and should last about 20 minutes.
If we look at the introduction, we can see listed points 1 to 6. The aims of the compulsory basic training course, the importance of wearing the correct equipment and clothing, the need to be clearly visible and conspicuous, the legal requirements of riding on the road, why motorcyclists are vulnerable, and the need to ride at the correct speed with due regard to the road, surface and conditions. Later on we'll move to an eyesight test. If we move to point 1 now, the aims of compulsory basic training. These are to ensure that you are safe and competent to ride on the road on your own. You will learn basic machine handling and road safety skills and techniques. Moving on to point 2, and that's the correct clothing. And we see here that we need a safety helmet, protective boots, gloves, jacket, trousers, waterproof clothing, eye protection. And as you can see here, we're looking at warmth and dryness to give us concentration. In summary on this section, we have the legal aspect, the thinking distance, the stopping distance, the road surface and condition, and the effects of acceleration. The need to drive at the correct speed according to the road and traffic conditions. If we now go back to the introduction and recap, can you tell me the aims of the compulsory basic training course for motorcyclists? Chris?
To teach you to ride safely and competently when riding on the road on your own.
Good, good. Can you tell me the importance of having the correct equipment and clothing? Oliver?
You need to be warm and dry to aid competent concentration.
Good, good. And sticking on point 2 there, again, the importance of the correct equipment and clothing. Another point that we need to remember, please, Scott.
You've got more chance if you're wearing the correct gear if you're involved in an accident.
Good, good.
Before any practical tuition, the trainee should be told and understand the aims of the compulsory basic training course, the importance of having the right equipment and clothing, the need to be clearly visible to other road users, the legal requirements for riding on the road, why motorcyclists are more vulnerable than most road users, the need to ride at the correct speed according to road and traffic conditions. The trainee must pass the eyesight test before on-road training is given.
Okay, Scott, if you recall, the final element of the first objective was an eyesight test. Can I ask you before we go any further, do you wear spectacles at all? No. You don't? Okay. Standard number plate size at a distance of 20.5 metres. Could I ask you to read the number plate for me, please?
G39BLO.
Good, that's fine, thank you.
Familiarisation with the machine and controls. The instructor introduces the trainee to the machine and its controls, starting on the left and working around the machine clockwise, beginning with the clutch, the instrumentation, including the speedometer and tachometer, and the various switches, the use and action of the throttle, and the front and rear brakes, the kickstart and, if fitted, the electric start, the fuel and oil fillers and tap operations, and finally the use of the gear shift mechanism. which is finally
This
linked
helps us
to
pull
the
away
use of the clutch.
and change gear, yeah, by disengaging and engaging the gears. Yeah. I'll just put the ignition switch back on. You'll see here the indicator switch. Left hand indicators rear, front, and the right hand indicators. Yeah. By operating this switch over to the left, you'll see the indicators start to flash. Yeah. Similarly, moving back through the central position over to the right, you'll see the right hand indicators start to flash. Yeah. Below that, we have the horn button. Yeah. Like so.
When pointing out the use of the controls to the trainee, the instructor should always operate the controls as they should be operated when riding on the road normally. For example, 4 fingers covering the front brake lever, the foot in the correct position when depressing the rear brake. The kickstart swung out and then operated with the foot in the correct position and put away again afterwards. The gear shift lever operated with the foot in the correct position, using the toe and the base of the boot. The clutch lever operated correctly and with 4 fingers covering the lever. Taking the machine off the stand and putting it back on again. The instructor demonstrates to the trainee the correct method of taking the machine off the stand and then putting it back on again. The trainee must practice and be able to do this correctly before they can progress to daily and weekly checks, as in the manual. The instructor should always be in such a position as to be able to assist the trainee in case of problems. Trainee gets feel of the brakes.
Okay, Scott, to give you some experience and familiarisation of the weight and the balance of the machine, I'd like you to wheel it round as you stood now. First of all to the right, and then round to the left in a figure of 8. Okay? I'll stand at the side here, just you know, in case of any mishaps. If you could just start now, round to the right, round to the left, nice and slow. Okay, swapping now round to the left. Okay, keeping round to the left. Now round to the right. Okay, if you could just ease your front brake on gently. Okay, does that feel okay? Yeah. Okay, good, good. You like to put your machine back.
Starting and stopping the engine. The instructor demonstrates the correct method of starting and stopping the engine. The trainee then practices until they can do so safely and competently, and must do so before they can progress to the next element. Moving off and riding in a straight line. The instructor must teach the pupil how to pull away without stalling the engine, and then be able to ride along in a straight line. First of all, ensure that the gears are in neutral and the engine then started, the clutch pulled in and first gear selected. The instructor should be in such a position that he's able to assist. The engine revs are increased and the clutch can be slowly let out and the machine begins to move. This must be practiced until the pupil can pull off safely and competently without stalling the engine. When he can do this, then riding along in a straight line.
Okay, with regard to motorcycle braking, remember I explained about how the front brake should be applied slightly before the back brake. Yeah? What we're going to do now is a demonstration showing the effect of the front brake and the rear brake and their effectiveness. This is called the push demo. Chris, if you'd like to come round, please. Okay, Scott. Apply your back brake only, please. And ready. And release your back brake, please. Okay. Now just apply your front brake only, both feet on the floor. And ready. Okay, good.
The instructor must ensure that the trainee can stop the machine in a defined area with the correct use of both brakes. The instructor signals the trainee to move forwards and then gives the signal for emergency stop. It is important to ensure that both brakes were used and in the correct sequence. The instructor shows the effects of correct braking by demonstrating first with the rear brake only, then the front brake only, then both brakes together. This simple illustration shows very clearly what could have happened if both brakes hadn't been used.
Okay, I'd now like to demonstrate a simple gear changing exercise that I'll ask you to carry out in a few moments. For this demonstration, I'm just going to take the machine off the stand. Okay, now under normal circumstances, obviously I wouldn't sit on the machine without wearing a safety helmet, but I'd like you to be able to hear me correctly. Okay? With the engine running, not in normal situation, what I'd like you to do is select first gear, like so, and move away. Once underway, having let the clutch out, I would like you then to pull the clutch in, shutting the power off, taking the gears up from first, through neutral, into second, then letting the clutch out, putting the power back on. Yeah? Having done that, I would then like you to bring the machine to a controlled halt at the other end of the site. Okay? Do you understand? Yes. Okay. Okay, Chris, if you'd like to put your safety helmet on, and I'll ask you to carry out this exercise first. Okay, okay. Okay, so with the engine running, okay, this is how we would carry out the simple gear changing exercise. I'd just like you to go through it now before we actually start the engine. So we've got it in neutral now. If you pull the clutch in, select first gear, okay, clutch out, and a little bit of throttle. So we're moving along now in the first gear. We now want to go up to second gear, okay? So we close the throttle slightly, in with the clutch, foot under the gear, up into second. Yeah? Release the clutch slowly, introduce throttle again. Okay? Coming back down, assuming now that we're going along in second gear, we reduce power again, in with the clutch slowly, down into first gear, okay? Releasing the clutch slowly, okay? Bring the machine to a controlled halt. Is that okay? Yep. You understand? Yeah.
When the trainee can confidently handle the machine, change to one long circuit for the gear changing exercise. slow riding. The trainee should be able to ride the machine along as in slow moving traffic. Figure of 8. The trainee must be able to ride the machine round a figure of 8 circuit. The trainee must be able to carry out an effective rear observation without deviation. To practice this, the trainees ride around a circuit and do a rear observation on the instructor's signal. Moving off on a road. The instructor explains the correct sequence for moving off as on a road, with the engine running, the machine in gear, and the right foot covering the back brake. All-round observations, signals, rear observations over right shoulder, the lifesaver, and if there's a suitable gap, move off, accelerating up to a safe speed. Move off. Rear observation, mirror. Indicator. Rear observation, lifesaver. And move off, accelerating up to a safe speed. Right turn. In order to complete this manoeuvre on the training site, the right turn has been split into 2 parts. First of all, getting into position. The instructor explains the sequence. Rear observations, indicator, lifesaver, and then moving across.
Right, Scott, that was quite good. Just a small fault on the final positioning, yeah? If you notice, you're just over the centre point of the road.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to see next time is perhaps 18 inches over to the left, and that should be pretty spot on.
Second half of the turn. Rear observations, adjust speed, gear. Rear observations, check following traffic. Look behind lifesaver before turning. After turn is completed, normal position and cancel indicators. Left turn. The instructor explains the sequence for a left turn. Observations of road and traffic. Signal to other road users. Rear observations. Begin to adjust speed. Rear observations to check following traffic. Look behind lifesaver over the left shoulder before turning. Overtaking. The instructor explains the correct sequence for overtaking. Moving off. observations of road and traffic conditions, indicator, lifesaver before moving out, and lifesaver over the left shoulder before moving back in.
When we're out on the road, we need to pay particular attention to varying weather and road conditions. These can have a dramatic effect on the stability and handling of your machine. For instance, loose surfaces, gravel on the roads, greasy surfaces, fuel spillages from other vehicles. Obviously in colder weather, you could have icy conditions. Yeah? We have highly polished surfaces, overbanded between certain sections of tarmac on the road. This could be very dangerous. Areas covered with leaves, wet leaves in particular, yeah? These are going to affect the adhesion of your tyres on the surface. Cold planing, this is where they scrape the top surface of the tarmac off, ready for recovering. If we hit that on a motorcycle at speed, it's going to seriously affect your stability and handling of your machine. We need to recognise the hazard previously and bring our speed down, okay? Weather conditions, particularly high winds, are going to affect the stability of your machine. Obviously, in the rain, it's going to affect your visibility, your stopping distances, things of this nature. We need to be aware of other vehicles on the road, heavy goods vehicles, from any direction. The blast caused as they come past off the wind will affect your stability. You need to be aware of this when approaching heavy goods vehicles.
Off-road conclusion and debrief. Not up to standard? Okay, Scott, well you've tried very hard this morning on the first part of the course, on the off-road part, but we're not entirely happy that you're ready to go out on the road yet. How do you feel about that?
I don't feel that I'm ready to go on the road.
Yeah. We're going to give you some more practice off the road, either tomorrow and up to standard. You've done, Steve says you've done well on the first part, so we're going out on the road now. Now, can you remember what is the safety position when you're riding along, the normal safety position?
1 metre from the curb.
Okay, and what happens if you come across an obstruction or hazard?
Rear observation indicating necessary pull out and pass the obstruction.
And before you pull back in again?
Rear observation over your left shoulder.
Okay, now as we're riding along in a group formation, right, like this, I'll be behind you. You'll be in the normal safety position and I'll be about a bike's width out. The reason for that is so that if you stop suddenly, there's more space for me. But also, if we stop in traffic, we're caught in traffic, we can close up in the group like this, so we take up less space. Then we can keep the group together, it's a lot safer. Okay? Now, okay, so in traffic, we can close up and it keeps the group together, it's a lot safer. Occasionally I might ride in front. In that position then, you'd be second, so where would you ride?
Just to the right of you.
And if we close up in traffic?
Then I move halfway down the side.
Okay, smashing. Right, now to help us, I'm going to issue you with the radio now. The radio will be clipped to your waistcoat or to your waistband, and you can't speak back to me, but you will be able to hear what I'm saying with this earpiece. Just slips on your ear, the helmet goes over the top, we plug it into the radio, and then I can give you directions. If I ask to check that you've heard something, I just want you to give a nod of your head. I don't want you to look round or gesticulate or anything at me, right? Right? Yeah. Mainly it'll be for giving you directions, but I may pick up some teaching points as well, which we'll deal with when we stop every few minutes for the debriefing. But it will mean that we can cover a far more comprehensive route. Okay? Can you just try that on, please? Okay? Then we'll slip your helmet on top of that, plug you up, out we'll go. I'll start by following you out, and we're just going to go just onto the road at the top here to do the U-turns, which is rather important. So when we're all fired up and ready, we'll test the radio. You'll lead the way out there, and I'll tell you when to pull in at the side.
Okay.
Okay? Having completed the U-turn, it's out onto the road, with the instructor in a position to observe the trainee. The trainee must show that he can ride competently and safely in a variety of road traffic situations, including as many of the following as possible: roundabouts, junctions, pedestrian crossings, traffic lights, gradients, bends and obstructions. On the roundabout, the instructor is in a position to observe the indications, observations and positioning of the trainee. Approaching traffic lights, they're held up in traffic. The lights change to green and then they can move on again. And now it's onto a quiet stretch of road to practice the right and left turns. Okay, take your helmet off second please, Chris. That's not bad at all, that, out on the dual carriageway there. Right, now, soon we came round the island. When you turned off the island, there were 3 lanes of traffic, 4 lanes of traffic there. It's very important to do that lifesaver before you move over, in case there are any cars that are coming from that other junction. Having pulled in at the side of the road, the instructor will go back over the road riding that's just been completed. He will pull out various points that he wishes to mention, and using the formula praise, criticise, correct, will praise the good points, point out the faults and give instructive criticism on how to put them right. Having done so, he will then brief the trainee on what's required next. In this case, on the quiet roads, it's the right turn, explaining the sequence for the right turn, where it's supposed to be done and what to do.
So you need a rear observation, signal, and if it's clear to move, a lifesaver to check your blind spot and then move into position. And then looking into the junction, looking at the road in front of you, you need another rear observation. Your indicator will probably still be on, so you may not, but that's the point you could consider the confirmatory arm signal. Okay?
Having observed the manoeuvre, the instructor again debriefs the trainee, praising the good points, pointing out the faults and offering corrective instruction, and then gives instructions for the next manoeuvre, in this case the left turn.
Not bad at all, that. 1 or 2 points that I'm picked out for you there, for your arm signal and your positioning. And now we're going to do the left turn. Now remember, we're going to do the left turn down here, turning left from a minor road to what's in effect a major road. So as you're coming down here, you need to do your rear observations to see if there's anyone to signal to. And when you're coming along here, you need to look, and you haven't got much of a view of this junction. So as you're coming along, you need to keep looking, and the closer you get to the junction, the more view you'll get. So I really want to see your head moving and looking right to left. Using your observations, left indicator,
speed, gear, and when you get down there, before you turn, what's the last thing that you do? Right, lifesaver over
The left shoulder.
and what's that for?
It's the last look behind before you turn to make sure nobody's come up the inside of you.
Okay, right, so we'll just run through that once more. I feel that lifesaver, but I can. And now it's off to find another situation to practice, in this case, a roundabout. We're going to do straight on at an island, so you'll need to come down here, positioning for straight on, so you'll need to be single lanes about the centre of the lane. Looking both ways, there are lots of junctions here, so you've got to keep your eyes about you all the time. Towards the centre of the island, keeping fairly near into the island. Just as you pass this last exit, indicate left. You don't need a signal for going straight on. Start moving over. Before you move over, lifesaver, and then peel off. Cancel your indicator, pull in on the near side. If it's safe, U-turn, and then come back down to the island again. Remember, it's straight on, so you won't need a signal, but you will need a left signal again, just as you pass the centre of that last exit, and a lifesaver to make sure it's safe for you to come up. And then when you've regained normal position, then I'm going to get you to signal right and come back into here. Okay, do you want me to run through that again? And next, it's back into the centre for the conclusion of the course. On the route back to the centre, the instructor closely observes the trainee. He must be sure that the trainee is sufficiently proficient to ride on a road unaccompanied. He looks at his positioning, his signalling, his observations, control of braking, use of the gears and the clutch, making a mental note of his standard of riding. Here we're approaching a junction. He's looking for rear observations, lifesavers and a good early signal for the right turn. An observation, a signal, positioning's correct, looks both ways, a lifesaver and then straight into the right turn. You've done very well today, Chris.
Okay.
How do you feel about it?
Enjoyed it.
Good.
It's been terrific.
Right. Now I'm satisfied that you're competent to ride on a road unaccompanied by an instructor. So I'm now going to issue you a certificate of validation, which means that you can ride on L plates on your own. But remember, this isn't the end of your training. You've got your accompanied test to come yet, and you'll need to continue your training sessions to get you through your accompanied test and to help you be a safe motorcyclist. And we'll make those arrangements in a minute. First, I'll issue you a certificate.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
We'd now like to show you a quick overview of the driving standards agencies accompanied motorcycle test. We take it some weeks on that the candidate, Chris, has done extra training sessions and has been prepared for the test. So it's over to the test centre and let's see how Chris gets on with his accompanied test.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you sign against your name, please?
Yes.
May I see your driving licence?
Yes.
Would you follow me into the adjacent room, please? Sit down. With these radios, I'll be able to give you specific directions in the course of the test. Hey Chris, are those ear pads comfortable?
Yes, they are.
Would you lead the way to your machine, please?
Yes.
Before proceeding on the road, the eyesight test will again have been completed.
Chris, would you take the next turning right? At the left-hand side of the road.
Here, the examiner has asked the candidate to pull up so they can carry out an angled start. If it doesn't crop up in the test, the examiner may also ask the candidate to do a slow riding exercise, a U-turn or an emergency stop. Instructions are given and the candidate proceeds with the test.
Take the next turning right. Chris, would you take the next turning left?
Having ensured it is safe to do so, the examiner signals the candidate to carry out the emergency stop. Having done so, he needs to pull into the side of the road. Obviously, the candidate's having trouble finding first gear. Is it a fault? Will it count against him? It's almost the end of the test. The examiner and candidate return to the test centre.
Okay, Chris. Could you remove the earpieces from your helmet and then put your hands on the table, please? I want to ask you some questions now on traffic signs. If you look at the attached... Okay, Chris, I'm going to ask you some questions now on safe riding techniques. When can you overtake on the left?
Right, the candidate has taken his test and the examiner now has to decide whether he's passed or failed. These are the sort of decisions that our instructors will be making for compulsory basic training. You must always remember that you have to be satisfied that each objective has been completed and that you have to be happy that that candidate, the trainee, is capable of riding home and then riding unaccompanied after the course. That's your decision. Did Chris pass his test? Well, what do you think?